about this. So welcome, Alexandra. Hello, London. Then, yeah, you can say hi if you want.
Yes, hi, Harald.
The microphone is working.
It is working. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
We shared the stage already last year with, 2 years ago, last time in Davos with Alexandra, where she introduced the AI index. And so I think there's brilliant work. It's also a new form of editorial studio that you do at Tortoise Media. So you can actually be part of the newsroom. Almost every night there's some kind of a live debate, and very, very interesting company and resourceful with a lot of journalistic background. So welcome, Alexandra. Then N-A-N-V. So Nancy from PwC, head of global sustainability, sustainable innovation experiences, and head of the experience centers, which have been come together with the acquisition of PwC of IXDS, which is a favorite studio of mine on from everything from innovation, from design thinking to human-centric new ideas, but actually putting ideas into action. So it's much more a shop where there's not a lot of notepads, but also, you know, soldering tools and woodwork and so on, but hands-on innovation work. And we will hear from you about, well, how does a giant in consulting works together now on the edge of this innovation, and how can innovation be an influence driver in solving these sustainability? So welcome, Nancy.
Thanks, Harald. Really happy to be here.
We're longtime friends, and I'm happy about your new role, and that we continue to do stuff together and well, share these passions for where innovation has to go. Now, speaking about passion, introducing Vaitea. Vaitea is sort of the I don't know if I can say it, but for me, you're the rising star. You're you know, right now, and we want to talk about it. We have been in Glasgow together. You have met all the coolest, most famous people and most important ones, because you've been one of the first 5 Earthshot prize winners. So Prince William kind of, you know, handed you the prize, or well, on stage there was a nice show. It was fantastic, the whole production of it, and I want to hear more about some of the backstage ideas and coincidences, meeting with Bill Gates and you know, Catherine and her Duchess. And I'm not so much into royalties, but there's probably a lot of to share about the protocol and so on. And that's also part of sustainability. So having this kind of public voice and having the, let's say, royals putting a focus on this and supporting this with a, you know, 5 times a million euros or pounds or US dollars, I'm not sure. So Vaitea is a co-founder of Enapter, which is a hydrogen startup. Interesting story from Thailand over Pisa to somewhere in Germany, building a gigafactory for water, for hydrogen, and now, and also having a team in Berlin where you were calling in from. Welcome, Vaitea.
Hi, really great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Harald.
All right. I want to start a little bit of an intro, and we have a Menti question, I think. So while we are talking, you have a chance to go into the app and go into Menti, where you know, we ask you where you're from. I think my splendid team around Marie, Luciana, and Roman will somehow handle this. While we start, I think let's start with Vaitea now. And I just want to, I'm so excited and congratulate you again for your winning prize. And then we go into a deep dive together with Alexandra and Nancy, and then we join the discussion and have also time for open Q&A. And if you have questions during our talk, please you know, share them, and our team will collect them and see if that we can also ask the our esteemed panelists. So I'm super happy to be here with these yeah, leading female forces. And I have to be, I mean, I'm mindful that, you know, obviously, well, no, I don't want to go there. So I'm really happy to be here with you. Okay, so this was a warm up. Vaitea, first question. So yeah, let's start with Glasgow. This was so exciting, and I was happy to see you there. Congratulations on the inaugural first Earth Prize. After now a couple of weeks, letting this sink in, talking to your mom and everything. So how do you feel? How does this make you feel?
I mean, I have to admit, it's still sinking in. It's been so packed with emotions, so much excitement, so much pride from our entire team. I mean, we grew the team from 11 in 2017 to now close to 200. So you can imagine close to 200 team members really jumping of joy and just the recognition from such a prize that our technology, our solution for green hydrogen is worth scaling. We are going in the right direction was incredible for us. It's really a launch pad into the world, and being one of the first ones to bring green hydrogen now to a even bigger stage, to a more mainstream stage is something we take very seriously, because it's absolutely aligned with our mission to make green hydrogen accessible and affordable for everyone. So I have to say it's still sinking in, and there's part of me that's still celebrating every day.
Of course, and you should. Before we talk about the technology, talk about the events around. So what has COP been to you, and who do you meet? I mean, I mentioned a couple of people, but who did you meet? And what was the most interesting thing? I have an idea, but we could say, but please, what is sort of...
Yeah, COP was a very interesting experience. Like many others, it was also my first COP, and it was with the Earthshot Prize. So it was full of great meetings, not only meeting the finalists, meeting the winners, but of course having the unique chance to meet their Royal Highnesses, Prince William, Prince Charles, the Duchess of Cambridge, the Duchess of Cornwall. And I think just having the chance to meet the supporters behind this prize was quite unique, because you could feel how engaged each of them were with each of the finalists, each of the winners, and asking questions to really consider, oh, okay, well, your system makes green hydrogen. Could I maybe use it in my home for energy storage? And that's just one of the first conversations that we had with Prince Charles. And it was just such a great moment to really bond on the potential and on the solutions that can really contribute to fighting climate change. So yeah, I mean, also one of the highlights, right, was being part of the one of the plenary sessions on breakthrough solutions for clean energy, and that was just condensed 1 hour of incredible moments where I had the chance to be, oh, hi, can I introduce you to Bill? And of course, my mind is like, who's Bill? And then Bill Clinton, no, that's what I was thinking. I was like, hey, is Bill Clinton gonna come? And then Bill Gates just kind of walks up, and I'm like, oh, wow, I know how supportive you are of green hydrogen. What a unique opportunity to tell you that our electrolyzers are the PC of the IT industry, because we're disrupting our own industry, and just having the chance to bond on that topic. And then shortly after, I'm told, oh, get ready, the Prime Minister is coming. And I'm thinking, okay, which Prime Minister is it going to be? We were just introduced to some other Prime Ministers. Who is it going to be now? And then Prime Minister Boris Johnson comes up, and he also walks over, and we have a quick chat. And yeah, then the fact that I think we made quite a nice impression on him, and clearly we are the microwave. This was mentioned in his speech of there's a system right there that looks suspiciously like a microwave, but it makes green hydrogen, and I believe it. She gave me her card, and I think at that moment,
and that was on the big stage when he really introduced the whole thing, right?
Exactly. So that was that still makes me laugh, I have to say. So those were just a few of the highlights. But also what I really did appreciate seeing was that green hydrogen really made it to all of the stages. It was on the big stages in the closed sessions, but also on the country pavilions, in the action hub, in the blue zone. So it was really everywhere. It was no longer something that we were, talking and being in our little hydrogen bubble, but it was really taking up a much bigger place.
So awesome. And so now, what was your experience with COP in general, spending the week there, getting to understand how the political system works in and outside blue zones, green zones, and so on? Can you describe this for us a little bit?
Sure. So yeah, it was quite interesting to be in a more political event, let's say like an exhibition made of country pavilions, because we're used to our own energy and industry exhibitions, but not a political one. So we had the chance to really go into each of the different countries, the different stands, whether it's SDG 7, for example, which had to go see and introduce ourselves. But the conversation is on a different level in the country pavilions, and that in parallel the negotiations are also taking place, but you have no idea. I had no idea where that's taking place, but all of those different conversations are happening at the same time. So it is definitely a bit overwhelming, right? Because it's huge. You make your 10,000 steps by 11 a.m. Just walking around, and then you have the green zone, which is a bit more interactive. I think we can still do a bit better, I think, for the green zone, because it's the zone that's open for the public. So people know about climate change. People actually know what the problem is, what the solutions are, but we need to go a bit deeper on it. I think there could have been a bit of a greater effort in deepening it, because if you already know the basics, then it wasn't that interesting, and everyone knows the basics by now. So I think what my intention for going to Glasgow was really to not only bring hydrogen to this conversation every time, but really talk about what we are doing and try to, not get too involved in the political conversations, because that's not our topic, and just follow the news on following actually what are the decisions being made.
Yeah, and that's maybe the moment where you talk a little bit about the, let's say, the technology and the fascinating story, maybe how you got involved with Enapter, what is now called Enapter, being in Thailand. So this is what I think so fascinating, your energy to kind of seek to be part of whatever this is, and out of coincidences, now you are the world famous co-founder. So take us through the first couple of steps, how this started, and I just admire the story. So
thank you for asking. I have to admit, up until 2015, I didn't know about green hydrogen. I knew about my renewables. I started a lot of initiatives and clubs in school, but didn't know yet about green hydrogen until I moved to Thailand after finishing my business studies, and was curious about what interesting things are happening in this town that I just moved to, which is Chiang Mai. And I mean, this is the beauty, I guess, of curiosity and luck. To be in a small town which happened to have the world's first solar hydrogen multi-house project. And I was absolutely hooked by it, because it was not only beautiful, but it was self-sufficiency to its finest. It's fully powered by solar. It has hydrogen energy for nighttime use or for during rainy season, but also water collection system, permaculture. It's got everything basically to live self-sufficiently. And when I was reading about this, I was like, oh, wow, what an amazing idea. These people behind this idea must also be absolutely incredible. And so it was really out of curiosity that I went on to meet who these innovators were, and then had the chance to meet my two co-founders, Sebastian and Jan, who had found the technology, acquired some prototypes and integrated it into their home. And then fast forward 2-3 years, where they really understood what worked with the electrolyzers, what could be improved, what potential does this have to become a modular and scalable product. And it was in 2017 that we founded Enapter based on this AEM electrolyzer technology, because we saw the potential to scale up this the production of this system, and also to drive down the cost ultimately of green hydrogen.
So fascinating. And there's a whole story how you hustled yourself in. I love it, but we leave it there. Now, and then the team, I think, is in Pisa, who originally started the research, and there's still a research arm there. And then can you just maybe touch upon the, let's say, 3 or 4 locations where you are, and then kind of we take it up for questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat.
Absolutely. So yes, in the very beginning, we were a team of 11 based in Pisa, which is where our original electrochemists were sitting, and a small production area was also already there. And it is still today our R&D and production center in Pisa. So we are at the moment expanding with more labs, more production area. We're in serial fabrication currently in Pisa, and we have about close to 100 of our colleagues in Pisa already. And we also have a software team based in St. Petersburg, because from the very beginning, we knew that the future of energy is both hardware and software related. And Sebastian was coming in with, of course, as you know, his software and mobile apps background. So from the start, we knew we wanted a software team there to develop our energy management toolkits. And so we've got St. Petersburg, we have Pisa. We also, of course, have a base in Thailand, both in Bangkok and in Chiang Mai. And we are in Berlin. It's our Hauptstadtbüro. So, of course, some good connections here in the capital. And very recently, we started the construction of our Enapter campus, which is where we will go into mass production of our systems, fully powered by locally generated renewables. And we already have about a team of 30 that are working in Saarbeck in North Rhine-Westphalia, and the team will very quickly grow as we open the Enapter campus end of next year.
So a gigafactory for hydrogen in the middle of nowhere, but in the middle of Germany, middle of Europe. I think it's a fascinating story, and I think if you see the energy of the team and of what a small group of passionate people can do, then I'm always optimistic that a lot of good things can happen, because we know a lot of the technology or a lot of the solutions we need, as Bill Gates, I think, also says a lot of the times, is not even invented, and we have to have it live in 8 years from now, so before this decade is out. Nancy, Alexandra, if you have maybe a question, you can chime in. And thanks, Vaitea, for sharing this amazing journey, really, and congratulations again of winning the crown. My last question would be, where are we going in the next 1 to 3 years? Not like maybe 10 years, but what's really on the horizon for you guys, besides maybe the factory?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the factory is really one of the biggest project that we're working on right now, because we are building this factory as a blueprint. So we know that in order for us to reach our audacious goal by 2050 to be responsible for 10% of the global hydrogen production, it's not going to be with just one gigafactory, right? We need a lot of our Enapter campus AEM mass production sites. So we are going in with the mindset of how can we replicate this campus, of course, fully powered by renewables in every location. And it's kind of a fun game to really think about what are all the requirements, and really thinking about the energy concept, and then all of the machines that we're using, and the logistics that we're setting up, and the reverse logistics to take back all of our products at their end of the lifetime. So the campus is definitely one of our core focuses, but we're also, of course, working on our products, right? The electrolyzer, which is our the standard kilowatt one, but also the megawatt scale electrolyzer. So we are we've had our first sale of our megawatts electrolyzer a couple of weeks ago, and now we're really working on building the first ones that will be in production already next year. And to go on the market in the following year. So the scale up of the production, the scale up of the products, the scale up of the team. I think in 3 years from now, things will look different. I don't know, maybe there will be already another Enapter campus live, but for now we're focusing on the first one.
All right. Thank you so much. For me, this is just inspiring. That's why we spent maybe a minute more than we should, but we come back to you when we open up the questions. Nancy, Alexandra, welcome to the next, or to this show, yeah, to the Wake Up Call. Alex, you got your coffee. Do you have a direct question to Vaitea, or I just chime in and want to hear about, obviously, your journeys? Okay, let's start with maybe Alexandra. So Alexandra, you're publishing now a new report, which I mentioned, the responsibility report. Can you share a little bit, just quickly, your background, what you do at Tortoise, and then how did you come about, let's say, doing this now? I think there was also a sustainability report. Let's just hear what, how did it come about to start the responsibility index?
So thank you, Harald, and so great to hear all of the ambitious and hopefully very doable initiatives earlier. So hats off to that. Yes, Harald, I have my coffee here. Very happy that I have. So just very briefly on my background, I'm an economist, mathematician. I've been in the index building space my entire career. I have spent many years at Moody's in the sovereign risk team, working on many countries. So have run Africa, have covered Russia, Central Asia, and been part of the methodology team that constructs these indices looking at risk, national risk. Then I also went and did that for Morgan Stanley. So again, sort of creating indices looking at debt sustainability models. Then I ran something called the Prosperity Index that looks at national success and how you can measure that beyond GDP. And then briefly, I was also CEO for a global emerging market rating agency called ARC Ratings. But all to say that my world has always been to be an architect of indices, to try and organize data around topics that are important, to nudge change. And I strongly believe that the index framework is a very productive one to nudge change, because everyone wants to look at, companies or countries that are doing well and what may be lessons learned from that. And so often the index, yes, the ranking is interesting, but the conversations we have around the indices are more about the how do we get there? So how do we get to the top? And as you know well, we have a big index called the Global AI Index, which was launched about 3 years ago. We actually are launching the release or the annual update of that on Thursday. But we also launched the Responsibility 100 Index 3 years ago. And the background of that, which was your question, came about because we were trying to work out through an index model how to create more urgency in the debate and make companies more accountable for their responsibility in climate solutions and trying to do better. And as you know, it's quite a crowded space. You've got many great indices out there, the FTSE Russell, the MSCI, Arabesque, Sustainalytics, and Morningstar. But what we couldn't see was any index that really lay out the say-do gap. What is the gap between what companies are saying they're going to do or committing to versus how they're performing against these commitments? So we structured this index looking at a talk rank. So what are companies committing to? What are they saying they're doing? And then we looked at their walk rank, which was performance, all performance metrics that we ranked the FTSE 100 on. We started with the FTSE 100 because there is a higher level of reporting requirements. So we thought we'd start there. We do plan to expand that to the 250, to the 350, and beyond the UK. But ultimately, what it gave us is a very clear view of companies that have a gap between what they're saying they're doing versus what they're doing. It's a very detailed index. It covers about 130 indicators across 7 pillars in the ESG sort of space, if you like. But it was also created, and the architecture around it was to point it towards the SDGs. So as a company, what can a company do in order to accelerate the SDG goals? So that was how it was structured, Harald.
Awesome. I want to bring in Nancy also, because now we have this let's say we have to start the acronym explanation, but I wanted to ask you, Nancy, about what does it mean ESG? And I have a little insert there because I was at COP meeting some of you, and for me, the most important thing, or let's say message I heard, was at a meeting which was a private dinner with the CEO of the Deutsche Bank, and it was a live stream, so I can talk about it. And he said in one sentence with these circa words, I still have to find the right quote, but he said, okay, the Deutsche Bank is going all into the ESGs, they for themselves and also to help their clients kind of, establish all the ESG measurements and then, let's say, work with the ESGs. And if the Deutsche Bank would not do this, they would be out of business in the next 3 to 4 years. In 3 to 4 years, $1 billion company, kind of the heart of German AG, basically would be out of business, according to the CEO. So that, for me, is explosive stuff. What is the ESG? Tell us, Nancy, because this comes back then also to the index. Because why is this so important to get the rating right and done and start looking at this? Nancy, PwC.
Yeah, I mean, let me start where I'm coming from, and I'm probably less of an ESG expert than Alexandra is. But let me try to explain why I'm driven by this topic. So my background is in innovation. I've been pretty much running innovation studios for the last 20 years. First building up Futur globally, and then building up IXDS, my own company. And we've always been focused on product services, better business models behind those, and helping companies transform. And for many years, it was all about user centricity. And of course, digitalization was a big topic, but we've also done lots in the IoT space and building real products and services. And design and innovation has moved in the last couple of years to focus less on like the one specific user, but really focus on more stakeholders, where the planet is one of those stakeholders, and moving from user-centered design into planet-centric design. And we've all been part of that, but it always felt that there's only this much we can do from a design and innovation studio perspective. And so we decided to sell the company to PwC last year. And I'm really excited about that. I mean, most of the design world was a little bit like, oh, why would you do that? Yeah. And obviously, why would PwC be interested in an innovation studio? But for me, it's a real luxury to now have a really big team that works on ESG, and that is like a real expert in KPIs, reporting, regulatory, and can really help us. Our big ambition is to move all these expertise into the innovation process. And so in a way, I'm probably somewhere in between Vaitea and Alexandra, because my aim or my role in this is to really merge the two sides, to say we can only do innovation really well if we understand, if we have the data and we look at the data and we look at what can we improve and how can we actually move that early into the process, that when we are developing new ideas for business models or products or services, to already know what impact this idea or this product will have in the end on the ESG reporting. And at the same time, to really use the expertise of the supply chain experts in the design and now what we are doing, because we as designers, we aren't experts in measuring supply chains. And I really want to merge or bridge the gap between these like two very opposite worlds, because I don't believe that it's enough if companies only focus on their internal operations and trying to get their climate numbers right, or the emissions down, or whatever they can do within their operations. But I really think they need to look at their core business models and what are they standing for in this world and what are they actually delivering, because you could pretty much do ESG reporting and have pretty okay numbers because you've switch to green energy or whatever else, but still have a really shitty business model and delivering products and services that the world really doesn't need, or that don't solve any of the core problems. And that's basically, my ambition is to really merge these two sides of the game into something where we can close the loop and we can really learn from the numbers and the reporting and the indices and everything that we have to move that back into innovation and come up with better ideas.
And you are in a company which is also super ambitious. So in June, you announced that PwC globally will invest 12 billion euros into all of the ESG initiatives, measurements, and so on. And you want to hire 100,000 people in the next 5 years to help build this. And that was for me a very, clear signal that nobody hires people just, because they have to do business. It's also because, well, there's a huge opportunity, obviously, for you, because there's insecurity out there, and we need the reporting, and people need to deal with this. Now, who can explain what is ESG? Because there might be some people like, okay, now I have to tune out, because what is it? And what is the difference between ESG and CSR? Who wants to take a crack and maybe add it? Start, Nancy, yeah?
I mean, I can give you my perspective.
Yes,
so I think CSR in the past was like companies running their operations and their whatever they were doing, and then taking parts of their profits and moving it into corporate social responsibility activities. And I think we are beyond that now. We are now into, okay, let's measure what we do at the core, like how is that doing on the environmental side, on the social side, and what does it mean for governance? And I think that's already a big step forward. So in the whole consulting business, most clients come to us at the moment, they don't talk about digital transformation anymore. They are all now talking about ESG transformation. Yeah. So how do we transform towards that, which is, I think, a really big step already. It's not just let's do our core business and move parts of the money and doing something good. And then for me, the next big step is from ESG and ESG reporting into really the core of the business and the core of the business model. And I don't have a proper name for that yet, but it's somehow that's even the next step for me to really transform. And that's why I love what Vaitea was talking about, because I think it's just a brilliant example of how innovation can really come up with different solutions. And that can, of course, be startups, but in our world, also the big corporates, they need to look at this, and they need to look at like new things that they can do from the core to change things.
Yeah. Alexandra, what is there another explanation that you can share, or what's your point of view on ESG? How does it relate to CSR and SDGs?
Yes.
Let's Nancy, bring another one in.
Well, Nancy and I share perspectives, so there's no tension here. I cannot disagree, Nancy. I think that's spot on. I think it's absolutely correct that CSR was, very much in the past how companies would think about doing good. But it was a separate operation. It was a separate entity. It was like, well, let's put some money in a bucket and let's do some nice things for the local community. Not that that was bad, but it wasn't very evolved. And it certainly didn't reflect what is needed in the world. ESG is, of course, the operationalization of CSR, right? It's sort of a 2.0, but we really need to be in a 3.0 world. And that's where Nancy sits, right? It is, how do we actually completely re-engineer our business models, and should we really rethink that? And actually, from there, we also really need to rethink. I mean, a lot of thinking right now is challenging the notion of growth, and actually whether the models that we have on economic growth, that everything is pointed towards, like constant forward movement, constant expansion and consumption. Is the way that we, should think about companies and growth, but it's very difficult to know what you then put in place and how you serve your, societies without that growth. So I think there's sort of a big debate that needs to be had there, and it's about sort of readjusting people's expectations of expansion and travel and financial growth, and sort of rejig it to other types of growth that sort of needs to be part of a success story. And that's where, in my past measured all of those things that go into national success that was very popular about 10 years ago, but actually it's very relevant today. So look at well-being, social capital, communities, and those other aspects rather than just financial gain. So Of course, that requires maybe a completely different tax structure and so on. And so, but I think sort of, yes, CSR is sort of very much in the past, but and where we need to be is there. The measurement, I think, is interesting from our perspective, because you can see on an index really the huge range in which companies are in terms of even being aware of measuring their current businesses. You have companies at the top of our index that are very aware, right? They are very strong on the measurement of ESG. It's been part of their corporate culture for a long time. And you can see that manifesting itself in their reporting activities and their performance as well. And then at the lower end of the index, these are big companies that really are not even close to starting to think about the responsibility they have to not only report, but also perform against these.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I want to just, let's say, say something. I learned that the European Union and Commission and so on started a new law that I think, maybe Nancy, you can correct me, or any of you, that in Europe, I think an impressive, now it's about 15,000 companies who have to report, mostly public companies, on ESG. And right now it's, not all of them receive penalties or any kind of, problems when they report it, if the numbers are not so correct. But from the year, I think about 2022, you have to start to report about the next year, basically in 23 and 24. And it will start with companies which have, more than 250 employees. So that will be another 49,000 companies who right now probably don't even know that they have to start reporting on it. And I think that's a massive, undertaking, because for me, the example is that you have a bakery chain in Berlin and they have 20 shops, and with 10 people a shop or 15, all of a sudden, you are no longer the baker, you are now the chief sustainability officer of your enterprise, and you have to look at how much water do you need or produce if you do the croissants, and all of a sudden that could lead to your bank coming back to this incoming statement saying, "This is amazing, Mr. Baker, I like your bagels, but I cannot finance your next shop anymore because you are now stranded assets." It's like an oil company. All of a sudden, if you don't deal with these, let's say, certain issues in your sustainability reporting, is this a right assumption, or what are we leading in? What are we getting into ourselves? This is I said basically my theory is, for innovation, the CFO will now be our best friend, because your background from Moody's is basically, the financial markets are now might be even faster, definitely faster than politicians, and faster than even innovation people might think that they have to do. What is your assessment on this? Is this a wild guess, or is this sort of, are we getting into this?
Mine, Harald, or Nancy? Nancy, you go first.
All three. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, you're exactly right, and I think it's already happening. I mean, most companies do understand they need to deal with this, and they go to the consultancies like PwC and the like to say, we don't understand the regulatory, you need to help us minimize risk and make sure that we get our reporting in order. And it's a lot of work coming in on that field, and it's I mean, rightly so that people have to report on it now and look at things like Lieferkettengesetz and the like. And for me, it's more, how can we move companies beyond that? So this is just really what they have to do. And I agree with you that also in deals, M&A activities, I mean, it's a huge topic now, the evaluation against ESG criteria, because it's a real value driver. If it's done well, and it's a real risk if it isn't done well. But for me, my job is, how do we actually get companies on the next level? How do we get them beyond the just necessary to look at the potential that lies in this? And from my perspective, there's a huge potential in dealing with these topics, not just from a a pure reporting perspective or the necessity, but really looking at how can I make a difference? And because customers and stakeholders and everyone I deal with, I mean, the real value of my company going forward will depend on the innovation potential that I bring to the table right now to deal with this. And it's not like I can just report and minimize my risk for the next 3 to 5 years, but I think everyone needs to step up now and say, you know, how do I actively transform? Because if I deal with this today and if I transform my business model, then I'm actually having a huge competitive advantage. And lots of the people I deal with, whether it's business partners or whether it's clients, will actually will go with me, and that will drive business success. So I'm really, really convinced it's not just a pain or something that's a cost driver, which for many companies, that's what it is at the moment, but it will be a real value driver if done right.
I have a question here. We have questions starting now coming in from the audience. So Bastian, part of a big conglomerate, a huge company, says, or asks, is there already a clear guideline on the ESG requirements? Is that already yet? Or I think there's still, you know, there's also competing standards, right? How can you maybe enlighten us? Alexandra, do you?
Yes.
Why did you not call your thing, for example, the ESG index? Because you said responsibility. Tell us a little bit. ESG is not only one thing, unfortunately, right now. It's still merging together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrific question, and on everyone's mind, because everyone's saying, I mean, many companies are saying, yes, we will do our best to report, but against what? Yeah. Is it TCFD? You know, how do we define the E? How do we define the S in particular is very hard, and G to some extent. And there are movements, you know, the big four are putting forward some guidelines on what should be, you know, how we will start to converge.
The big four are the big four consultant companies, like
exactly.
PwC, Deloitte, KPMG.
But
EY.
I've got to just say it's even on the things that we think are pretty straightforward to report on are really complicated. I mean, if you look at the way that scope 1 and 2, for example, it looks straightforward, but there's lots of variation. You know, some companies report market-based scope 1 and 2. Some
you have to also explain, please, what is scope 1 and 2? So there's scope 1 and 2 and 3. So just
well, I mean, very basically, scope 1, 2, and 3 are about emissions, and there's sort of direct emissions, and then there's sort of the next level of your emissions in your
supply chain
operating environment, and then your scope 3 is a sort of a gross measure of emissions. So that looks at sort of everything that you touch on as a company, your business trips and so on. You sort of measure that as well, which is very difficult. Yeah. But even on your scope 1, which is direct emissions, there are variations in how you can do that. So I think we're definitely, there is no, the discussion is there, the convergence is happening. And as you get the regulatory side on board, and assurance and insurance companies, because of the risks associated with this, as Nancy mentioned, there will be an acceleration in convergence. Now, if I take you back to the 1920s, where there was a lot of different ways to report profit and loss, for example, just as many as there are right now in looking at ESG, measurement, and eventually that converged into a standard setting that is more or less the same around the world, but it took many, many years. And it wasn't until assurers, insurers, and the regulatory bodies came in and said, look, we're going to go with this. Yeah. And so then eventually companies, they did conform to that convergence of standard setting. However, one thing I just wanted to touch on that Nancy was saying before, on the reporting side, when it comes to innovation, one of the things that we try to tease out, which of course is very important, is actually how much of your R&D is spent on innovation. And that's something that companies really don't report on that well. And actually that reporting side is very important. If you can start as a company to look at, there's R&D, and then there's R&D that's earmarked for innovation, and to try and, distinguish what is incredibly important. Until we get companies to start to report on that, it's hard to know from the outside which are the most innovative companies. And that's where, if you push for the reporting, you create the transparency, and companies start to look up and look around and see what other companies are doing. One example, of course, that is the sort of standard bearer of transition or transformation is, of course, Dong, the Danish oil and gas company that became Ørsted, which is the completely transformed its business model into a renewable energy company. And that was through, heavy R&D that got spent. A great example, but not all companies have that wherewithal. Not all companies have that mission and ambition. But
we see it's possible. That's also good. You have a role model, right? There's at least more companies starting in this direction.
Yes, we do. And the other thing I think is, our principles are that the data out there, we only take publicly available data. And that is because we push for transparency. Companies have to start to be transparent. When you then put all of that in the public space, and you can see on things, even like modern slavery, actually the variation in how companies perform on their reporting on modern slavery is huge. And it's when companies start to look at what the other companies are doing, they're like, oh, okay, actually, we could do better, we should do better, and actually we can, and we think we're doing better, but you don't really realize that until it's all exposed in a sort of a relative ranking. So I think it is still a very important. And then mandatory reporting is obviously one of my pet peeves, and I think that it's something we will be moving towards with the regulatory bodies becoming more involved.
I want to ask Vaitea, because obviously we are all in this together. I was impressed because you said that you're already looking at not only producing, but also how do you take back your products, and how can you recycle or refurbish or so. So if you already think this way, are you also thinking about, oh, do we have to also do this reporting? And I mean, as a startup, that's right now you want to put the product in the market and make deals. Is that already on your radar, or can you even grasp this?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think this is something that we are thinking about, because, and it's not really in the sense of, oh, we will have to do reports, so we should think about it. It's more, we want to lead the way on how company in the future should be like. We are starting, we're a greenfield in a sense. So we are building a new campus where we can do everything right, or at least do everything in the best way we would like for it to be. So it's more what is, the best case scenario that we can bring forward, rather than trying to retrofit and make something fit into what a report should report on. So we have a lot of flexibility and freedom, and also we have, I think, the right leadership and the right mindset to make those right decisions from the beginning, to already think about what is our footprint today in our Pisa operation, and what it will be our footprint in the Saarbeck campus, where it's fully powered by renewables, right? So it's solar, wind, biomass, hydrogen. And I think it'll be a really interesting comparison to go from the Pisa site to the Saarbeck site, and of course to think about all of the 1, 2, 3 emissions, scope emissions that we have. So yeah, it's a bit of a different mindset, but of course we're already working on those reports.
Very cool. We have a question here from Koshi Samuel. It says, in recent years, our markets have transformed to reflect this conscious shift from businesses, as having a good ESG strategy is associated with good financial performance. So how does ESG impact profitability?
I'm happy to take that one.
Yeah. Sounds like you.
I mean, there are two things to untangle there, right? There is one. I mentioned Dong becoming Ørsted, right? They're hugely profitable, and more so than they would have been, all else being equal, in the old world. So there's, and I'm sure Nancy would agree. Innovation spurs. There's lots of downstream activity that happens from that. A lot of growth. The innovation to solve climate problems. Also solve other problems. And when you sort of look at that and driving and have a mindset of innovation, you also become more efficient on everything else. So I do think there is these other aspects to a innovation mindset company that will benefit from that. I think there is a question of whether there is a question of companies that need to conform or need to report and perform better on ESG measurements may actually take a hit on profitability. And as I said before, that is a mindset that also needs to change, that we need to look at the cost to the people and planet versus the return on investment. And, everyone should be willing to take that financial hit. You can also see when big asset managers and pension funds are realigning their portfolios, there is a push from customers to go into, clean or climate focused funds, and are happy to have a bit, lower return on that. So I think that is definitely starting to take place.
Yeah, maybe we have 8 more minutes, and if there's any more questions, please send them in the chat where you watch this. I have a question, because you touched upon it also, Alexandra, a little bit before, about the economy. So let's say if we zoom out a little bit and think about, John Elking talks about regenerative economy and Paul Polman. So we're not only going from sustaining what we have to say, okay, how do we give back? How do we start companies, products, and processes in a way that we generate more good than actually just not harming too much? How do you see this happening? Because that is, especially in a situation right now where, we're still in our cocoon, and, COVID is rampant still in our streets, and even more maybe over the winter. So how hard is it to go into a new mindset of the economy? And, John Kerry announced something like, okay, there's 130 trillion asset under management going now into sustainability. But I think out of this kind of under management, which is a huge number, obviously big shifts could happen. I think 4 or 5 trillion are now really committed. The rest is sort of, yes, we want to do more. How do you see this, let's say, also from a macroeconomic point of view? Are we actually going more into a new form of capitalism, economy, regenerative? Is this happening, or is this another 10 years until COP36 or something? Because that's hard. I mean, this is sort of the moonshot, right? So not because it's easy, it's hard. We have to get into a more planetary thing. So, but this is a question for all of you. So what's your take on where does the economy have to lead? And do we see indexes or small indices of if there's change happening?
I have a little bit of a different view on it, because I think we can't go about, or we can't just force it by regulatory or reporting criteria. Or that's a really good start, but I think we need to become a lot smarter about this. We need to actually build systems where we incentivize a certain behavior or a certain. So actually, I want those companies who do good to actually have a direct impact on their P&L, because a certain behavior is incentivized. And I mean, we are working at the moment on a big thing where it's about data transparency, and those that actually make their data transparent and make it available for everyone else to basically have a direct profit from that and be incentivized. And the same for consumers. So how do we build systems where using good products and doing good things and actually doing things that are beneficial for everyone else will actually have a positive impact for yourself immediately? And I think that's what we need to get to.
So what could be the systems?
We need to build smarter systems. We can't just go by, someone pushing down the rules and forcing everyone to report, but we actually need to make it really attractive to build different companies and different, and actually make it really attractive for me to just go and buy from those companies that do good and use those products that are actually better than others. So, that's what we need to focus on.
Is a system, you mean a business system, or you mean like a red light on the product and say, oh, this is actually, I don't know, too much sugar, too much CO2, like OT is doing?
That's a little bit too simple, I think, but really, social systems, like think of something like payback is really like dumb system in a way, because I can buy whatever and get incentivized by payback points. But if you think that in a smart way, you could say, you know, how do I actually incentivize someone for a certain behavior, or using certain products, or working with certain companies because they're obviously doing better, or and then everyone's profiting from it, either financially, or you're giving me, on the other hand, more power to decide, you know, if I'm actually doing good, can I use the power that I'm getting from that to invest in other good initiatives? So, you know, how we are basically building a flywheel that's kind of powering itself. And I think we are by far not there yet to be smart enough how we are designing these systems.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually almost starting of a new discussion. So before I go and ask you for your final word, so to say, what is sort of your learning or mission that you want to share with the audience? I just wanted to point out, we have built the Leader in Sustainability, Innovation and Execution program for all of you, because these questions are, you know, just starting, and we put together an amazing group of 50 plus faculty, including Alexandra and Vaitea and you know, people from the UN. And so today is the last day of, you know, during COP26, we launched a white paper, and also comes with a kind of a promotion, because 26, so we gave 26% savings. So if you like to kind of take a hint to invest in yourself and learn more, go deeper, I highly recommend hanging out with our expert faculty. Now, the last final bon mot. So what is sort of your, you know, maybe, you know, we're getting into the end of the year, you're starting to reflect on the next year and years. What is maybe something you wish to see in the world coming about, you know, when with a spring, with a new energy? What are you hopeful for the next year? Let's make it in a positive, optimistic spin. So what is something in this field, or in your field and your work, that you're looking forward to for the next year or years?
I can start. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, in the spirit of positivity and what I'd love to see more of, I think collaboration will really be key to limiting our global warming and to this, you know, 1.5 degree benchmark. I think we have everything at hand. You know, we have the technology, we have the money. We just need people to really start working together. So, you know, we're obviously hiring a lot, and we're always looking for customers and for partners, obviously. So this is how, you know, how we can collaborate with each other, I think, at a global scale as well. So that would be really my hope, more collaboration, and of course, international collaboration.
Great.
Let me follow on that, because my answer would have been pretty much the same, which is, I think we need to go from like this very siloed thinking and like thinking of my business and the success of my business into exactly that. How do we build something together that's a lot smarter than what I can build by myself? So I'm also all up for collaboration and finding the people that have the same ambitions and form a tribe, basically, to make it happen.
Awesome. I love that.
My turn.
Yes.
I'm an economist, so I'm quite gloomy, and I'm Danish, so I'm really depressed. Actually, I'm not, but we're sort of quite, you know, glass half empty. So it's a really tricky question to answer on sort of, but I would say that there is a lot to be hopeful for. I think that the money that is being earmarked for this transition is potentially a big game changer. The only concern I have is that so much of the sort of tail end of where the solutions are going to come from are often spoken about in sort of framing it as innovation that has to happen and hasn't happened yet. So that worries me. But what I'd like to see is that the mobilization of this capital goes into the innovation that will help find climate solutions, in addition to everyone being much more aware of new business models and new ways of consuming and living. And I do think I might disagree slightly with Nancy on regulation. I do think that the governments can and should play a big role in sort of less carrot, more stick, probably. And also putting more funding aside for the big ideas on innovation and helping and pairing the private capital with public capital to push and accelerate these innovations and climate solutions. Awesome. So that's my hope.
All right. A lot of hope here. I'm really glad that we had this discussion, because my hope is in people. And I mean, who else like you three really amazing innovators and deep thinkers and makers. That shows the cross-pollination and the collaboration we can, I think, all do, and see that there's innovation and people with passion driving this. So I'm hopeful, and I really thank you from my heart for this hour. I hope you had fun as well. I hope everybody on the screens had fun. And if you see this in a rewatch, you know, please share it. I really think this will be just the start of these discussions. We're just going deeper, and we all have to go all in. Thank you all so much, and have a fantastic day, holidays, and see you in this hopeful spring when the sun is back also in London, Hamburg, Berlin, and Denmark. Just to think of you folks. All right. Thank you all, and have a fantastic day. Thank you for your time. Ciao. Thank you.